France killed the beast. Then more people died. A stuffed wolf stands behind glass at Versailles. The plaque calls it the Beast of Gevaudan. The case, according to the Crown, is closed. 300 leagues south, in a stone church that smells of tallow and damp plaster, a priest is writing a child's name into a parish ledger. The date on the entry is weeks after the official announcement. France killed the beast of Gevaudan. The king's hunter shot it. The court certified it. The celebrations happened. And then more people died. This is the story of the gap between two kills, the one that was supposed to end it and the one that did. This story has been turned into novels, a Hollywood film, and more theories than a provincial archive could hold. But the version that matters most is the one written in real time, in ink, by men who were burying their neighbors while the capital was celebrating. Something is wrong with the body. The wounds do not match. A girl, 14, maybe 15, tending cattle on a slope she had walked every morning that season, is found on open ground outside a village in Gevaudan. And the men who reach her first, farmers, not soldiers, describe marks that make no sense to them. The throat is targeted, yes, but the force is wrong. The pattern is wrong. The thing that did this did not drag her away to feed. It struck, it tore, and it left. Wolves do not leave. Wolves take what they kill into cover. Whatever came off that hillside wanted something other than food.
And here is where the case begins to rot from the inside. The survivors who fight back, the ones pulled free by relatives or driven off by cattle dogs, keep telling authorities the same thing. Too large, too bold, too deliberate. It does not flee from noise. It returns to places it has already attacked. It strikes in daylight, not the behavior of an ambush predator pressed by hunger, but something operating on a pattern the province cannot decode. Within weeks, the burials start stacking. In the parish of Saint-Flour-de-Mercoeur, the curé records a child's burial on the 14th of October. In Overs, another entry, same week. In Le Malzieu, a third. If you could lay the parish ledgers side by side, Saint-Flour-de-Mercoeur, Overs, Le Malzieu, the dates would overlap. The burial entries would stack. The ink has barely dried on one name before the next attack forces another. Wet grass bends under no visible weight. A bell sounds from a church tower too far away to mean safety. The brush shivers once, then holds still. 3 facts settle early and never resolve. First, something physical is out there killing people, and no trap, dog, or hunting party can corner it. Second, the people closest to the attacks insist, over and over, to anyone who will record it, that what they saw was not an ordinary wolf. Third, by the time anyone with real authority arrives, the story has already been told so many times that separating the animal from the fear becomes almost impossible. That third fact is the one that poisons everything that follows.
Because Gevaudan is not Paris, it is rough country, isolated, hilly, and poor. The people reporting these attacks have no mechanism to compel belief from men who have never walked their ground. Their testimony passes upward through layers of administration, each layer smoothing it, reshaping it, adjusting it to fit something a minister can summarize in a letter. By the time the Crown hears of the beast has already become a political object. The attacks do not stop. They accelerate. Local hunts go out with muskets, dogs, and fury. They come back with nothing. The terrain is brutal, dense brush, broken ground, limited sight lines. The beast seems to understand where the gaps are. Parties sweep one valley while attacks occur in the next. A deposition from Les Malzieux describes a dark shape low to the ground. A report filed at Sugues describes something reddish, heavy in the chest. Either Gevaudan is facing something that changes shape, or it is facing more than one animal, and no one is prepared to say that out loud. And here is where your answer starts to form, even if you do not realize it yet. Something you just heard is already shaping your theory. By the end of this story, you will defend it. The failure is not private. It is loud, spreading, and embarrassing. Pamphlets circulate. The beast becomes a story that moves faster than any hunt. And by the time the pressure climbs high enough to reach Versailles, the problem is no longer just dead villagers. The problem is that rural France is publicly ungovernable, and something in the hills is proving it with every fresh body.
The crown responds the way crowns respond, with spectacle. The dogs come first, before the horses, before the uniforms, before anyone sees Francois Antoine's face. The sound of trained hounds reaches the village. A column appears on the ridge that the province has no frame of reference for. Beaters in livery fan across the slope. A village elder standing at the edge of his own field watches the procession pass and does not speak. He has buried 2 neighbors this season. The dogs are beautiful. The muskets gleam. The man leading them has never set foot on this ground before. Antoine is the king's own lieutenant of the hunt, a man whose professional identity depends on killing what he is told to kill. The message is not subtle. The state is here. The beast will die. The embarrassment will end. Iron cools against a gunstock in morning air. Somewhere below the tree line, hoof prints fill with brown water. A dog whines once, low, and is pulled silent by its lead. For weeks, the operation grinds across the countryside. Dogs tear through undergrowth. Muskets fire at shadows. The operation looks like war, and it is meant to. But the most important detail in this case appears after France says the case is over. In September of 1765, Antoine's party kills an enormous wolf. The animal is large enough to be impressive, large enough to be displayed, large enough to be the answer. Antoine presents it to the court. The carcass is examined, praised, and effectively certified. This is the beast. Gevaudan is saved. The king is satisfied. The case is closed. The wolf is stuffed and sent to Versailles.
What happens next is the detail most accounts skip. The carcass deteriorates badly during transport. Its features become unrecognizable, and it is buried without public examination. Why display it at Versailles, then bury it before anyone with real zoological knowledge can study it, unless the answer it held was worse than the question it was meant to close? Every expert who has examined this case lands in one of 5 places. By now, you have probably landed in one of them too, and you are going to be wrong about at least part of it. And this is where the story you were told begins to separate from the story that was happening. In the weeks that follow, people keep dying. Not rumor, not hysteria. Recorded attacks, recorded wounds, recorded burials in the same parish books that had been filling since the beginning. The beast, or a beast, is still in Gevaudan. The official answer is already mounted on a wall in the capital, while fresh blood is soaking into grass 100 leagues south. The court does not retract. The court does not send Antoine back. The narrative has already been sealed,
The beast is dead, the crisis is resolved, and any further violence is local, ordinary, unremarkable. What the province experiences as ongoing terror, Versailles files under concluded. This is where the story splits open, and it never fully heals. Because now the question is no longer, what is the beast? The question is, how many beasts were there? And underneath that, did the official kill solve anything at all, or was it the answer the state needed regardless of whether it was true?
So what terrified Gevaudan more? One monster, or the need to pretend there was only one? Every piece of evidence from this point forward is contaminated, and that contamination is not a failure of the record, it is the record. The confusion is not a flaw in this story, it is the story. When evidence contradicts itself this consistently, the contradiction becomes the evidence. The descriptions that never quite agreed now look less like confused witnesses and more like witnesses seeing different animals. The timeline that seemed chaotic now suggests overlapping predators. The official kill that felt like resolution now feels like theater, the right spectacle at the wrong target. Musket smoke hangs in a clearing where nothing has fallen. Damp wool clings to the back of a neck. A crow lifts from a fence post with no urgency at all. 2 years pass. The attacks thin, surge, thin again. And then a man named Jean Chastel does what the king's hunter could not, or would not, do correctly. Chastel is not Antoine. There is no column, no livery, no dogs bred for spectacle. He is local, a man who knows where the ground gives way and where the brush thins enough to see through. The accounts that survive disagree on whether he was a skilled hunter, a recluse, or something the parish preferred not to name. What they agree on, in June of 1767, during an organized hunt in the woods near Les Saints d'Auvers, Chastel fires a single shot. And what falls is not a trophy for Versailles. When they open the animal, they find the remains of a child inside. No description matches Antoine's wolf. This one had been feeding.
After Chastel's kill, the attacks largely stop. Not instantly, not with a royal announcement, not with a carcass paraded to the capital. The violence simply drains out of the province over the weeks that follow, the way a fever breaks without anyone marking the exact moment the heat leaves the skin. The deaths stopped. The explanation never did. So, 5 possibilities. 5 ways to read the same blood on the same ground. Go back to the first attack. The girl on the slope, 14, tending cattle. The wounds that did not match. If a single wolf did this, one unusually aggressive animal, starving or diseased, emboldened past the point where wolves normally retreat from humans, then the case is ugly but simple. Wolf attacks on humans were not unknown in 18th century France. But one wolf does not explain what happened after Antoine's celebrated kill. And the descriptions? They vary so sharply between parishes that they stop sounding like the same species. They aren't. Think of 2 villages the same week. In one, a shepherd's widow describes a dark shape, low to the ground, that moved like a dog but larger. 30 leagues east, a woodcutter describes something reddish across the shoulders, heavy in the chest, that stood and watched him before turning away. These do not sound like the same animal. They do not sound like the same species. The second theory, multiple predators, resolves the chronology more cleanly than any other. If 2 or more wolves or wolf-dog hybrids were responsible, then Antoine could have killed one genuine threat while another continued. The inconsistent witness descriptions become not confusion, but accuracy. People in different valleys were seeing different animals.
And Gevaudan was not alone. In the same decade, similar attacks were reported in Limousin, in Périgord, in reports from as far as Cusago, near Milan, in areas separated by enough distance that a single animal could not have covered them all. The record does not connect these events, but it does not need to. The pattern connects itself. A shadow crosses open pasture faster than a man can turn. Grass flattens in a line that holds no track by morning. The air tastes of rain and iron and something underneath both. Far off, the sound of water moving over stone, constant, indifferent, older than any record. But wolves, even bold ones, do not typically return to settled ground after organized hunts. They do not target humans with this kind of repetition. They do not ignore gunfire. The third possibility surfaces because witnesses kept saying it, not a wolf. The 18th century was a period of private menageries, lions, hyenas, leopards imported from Africa and Asia for display in aristocratic estates across the Massif Central, creatures that had no business being in rural France, but that undeniably were. A hyena, in particular, would explain the strangeness that witnesses kept insisting on: the sloping back, the powerful chest, the willingness to attack in daylight, the targeting of women and children, behaviors consistent with spotted hyenas in documented African cases, but alien to European wolf behavior. Survivors described claws. Wolves kill with jaws. Hyenas use both. That ledger has never been found. No exotic carcass, no bill of sale, no escaped animal report tied to the right time and region. Nothing has. And then there's the fourth possibility, the one that sits underneath all the others like a foundation crack. Not that a person was the beast, but that a person managed it. The attack patterns, the convenient timing of official resolutions, the political pressure that shaped which kills mattered and which were ignored, all of it suggests that the beast's story was managed, even if the beast itself was not. The record does not prove that a human hand guided the animal, but someone shaped the story. There is a fifth explanation, and it is the one the record resists the hardest. Not that a person managed the beast, but that a person was the beast. That the wounds were inflicted by human hands using tools shaped to mimic claws. That the animal descriptions were what terrified villagers believed they saw, because the alternative, that a neighbor was doing this, was unthinkable. The evidence does not support this cleanly, but the pattern, targeting women and children, returning to familiar ground, escalating when hunted, is a pattern criminologists would recognize instantly if you moved it forward 200 years. And the detail that no one in the 18th century had language for: the beast did not always feed. It struck, it tore, and sometimes it simply left. Not hungry, not threatened, just finished. That is the explanation that keeps the churchyard quiet the longest.
The wolf theory explains the material evidence, but not the behavior. The multiple predator theory resolves the timeline, but not the strangeness. And the exotic animal? The witnesses kept saying it. The archive keeps refusing to confirm it. The human orchestration theory explains the politics, but risks collapsing into speculation the moment you push it past what the record actually holds. And the human predator? It explains the pattern. It does not explain the carcasses. But if you forced me to walk into that churchyard and point at the answer written in the stone, I would point at the one France never wanted to hear. But the record will not settle this. If it could, we would not still be standing in this churchyard. Gevaudan was likely terrorized by more than one unusually aggressive canid across a sustained period. Witness distortion, genuine fear, and institutional pressure fused those animals into a single creature in the public record. Antoine killed a wolf. Chastel killed another. The attack stopped not because the beast was finally slain, but because the last dangerous animal in the sequence was eventually removed, quietly, locally, without royal fanfare. Somewhere in a barn outside Auvers, a musket that killed something the state never acknowledged leans against a wall. No plaque, no ceremony, just a weapon and the silence around it. The province did not defeat a monster. It outlasted a series of predators while the state spent years pretending there was only one. Stone cools under a hand laid flat against a churchyard wall. Somewhere past the last house, brush thickens into darkness that holds no name. A candle gutters behind glass, too old to see through clearly. The wind carries nothing but the smell of wet earth and cooling stone. And that is what survives. Not the beast. No mounted specimen endures intact. No definitive skeleton sits in a museum case. No DNA sample settles the question. What survives is the gap between two kills, the one that was supposed to end it and the one that did. Antoine's wolf went to Versailles. Chastel's animal rotted in a field. The crown got its answer first. The province got its silence second. And between those two events, people kept dying in a countryside where the official truth had already been declared. The body they found that first summer, the girl on the slope, 14 tending cattle, the wounds that did not match, was never the last. The path is still there. The brush has grown back thicker. At dawn, when the light is flat and the ground is wet, the landscape looks exactly the way it looked when the parishes were still writing names in their books. Open, quiet, and perfectly suited to something that does not want to be seen. The parishes stopped writing names in 1767. The question they left open, whether Gevaudan faced a predator or a performance, is one that France has never answered. The record is closed. The ground remains open.